Morning and welcome to this week's round table. I'm joined today by Debbie and Mark, and we're going to be looking a little bit at finding the echoes of Jesus in our current situation in the books and the films that we read, and how that might help us to share the gospel. So I'm just going to start off by asking a question, and then we'll chat around the table. So guys, what books or films have you recently read or absorbed that might give you a way of sharing the gospel with people, and how's that work in your life? What's your experience of that?
So I kick off in terms of books. One that I'm reading at the moment, and by Justin Welby, go in the camera, Reimagining Britain. And I'm not trying to pretend I'm buttering up Justin particularly, but he does focus in the book, it's on his own views around particularly values in Britain and how they potentially under threat, actually. I'm kind of cheating because it's two books. So one of the key values he does talk about is around the sort of community, and basically how the whole community should benefit really from what it's doing. And I think within it, he's read this book somewhere, Utopia for Realists by Rutger Bregman, and he wrote this about 2014, and in it he is proposing a universal income where everybody effectively would benefit from a minimum sort of wage, irrespective of what you were doing or who you are and whatever role you were playing. And I think Justin's been picking up on elements of that. And if we look at what we have in the UK at the moment, universal credit, you can see underlying it is some of the themes that Rutger Bregman had there. And some of the language being used, it's almost as if it's been prepared and get ready to have that sort of universal income. And so I think those sort of books create an opportunity to open a debate when it appears on sort of the news or social media, whatever it is, and start to have that sort of conversations, and maybe even link them back ultimately to sort of Justin's points really about society and what it means to work together. Because isolationary, you start to get into this whole problem of inequality in society, and that just causes its own problems. So it's a good opening, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think too, when you think about this universal type getting together, I think we have had that experience being in lockdown, and how we've helped and reached out to other people. I mean, I think about like even the little Easter boxes that were given out this week, how it made, you could see how it really made everybody feel special and unique when they received them. But one of the movies I just happened to come across was called Instant Family, and it was about a couple who had decided to become foster parents, and they had their reasons for it. But as the movie went through, they had taken in 3 foster children, and one of them was a teenager, and she couldn't understand why they took her in. And in some point in the movie, she says to them, why did you take them in? Why did you take me in with my family? Because they took her 2 siblings with her as well. And they said, something was missing in our lives, and you came in and fulfilled it. And I think when you think about things like that, that's what a lot of people are feeling, that missing part of their life. And you can witness to people by saying, there is a missing part, and Jesus can fill it. And so that's kind of where that movie really stuck with me. And I think about it all the time, and I probably thought about 3 weeks ago, and I think about it all the time and think about that missing piece.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And one of the things you mentioned there was knowing that people are searching for something at the moment. And how do you keep in touch or regularly work out what popular culture, what the matters are for people at the moment, what popular culture is bringing up, what are the issues that people are concerned about, worried about, that we can bring the gospel into? How do you keep track of those sort of things?
I think that's a good question, actually, because what is popular culture, and how do we define that, really? Because for myself, I could say that as long as the brewery's still open, that's very popular and cultural for me and my friends as such. But popular culture arguably is what's happening in the world, and how we're picking that up. And I would pick that up predominantly through things like the opening up the internet browser and some of the stories there, although not all of them are true. or the sort of more traditional, maybe BBC or ITV television or radio news. But a lot of people obviously pick up a lot more from social media these days. And whereas ITV and BBC might have slightly more regulation to them and how they report things, anybody could post anything on social media, and stories get believed quite literally. I just had my COVID jab on Friday, and of course there were stories going around about, you know, implants and things like this going on with them. You know, how do you counter that? And if that's becoming popular as a culture, then we need to be able to pick up on it. I don't do a lot of social media myself, I have to say, so I pick up most of that actually through my daughter, who is much more connected to social media than I am. And that's how you sort of reach out and pick up and understand what's going on.
Yeah, I kind of get a lot of my information from social media as well, and I have like news feeds that I pick up on and things like that, and I keep in touch with American news, usually on YouTube or something like that. But I do have to be careful because, like Tony said, there are things that are out there that aren't quite true, and we have to be selective, and we have to double check all the information. And so that's what I tend to do. If I've heard it once and I'm really not sure, it doesn't feel right with me, then I double check it, and I check it with like BBC or something like that to see if they're saying the same thing.
Yeah, and all of these things are really important, aren't they, about in terms of making the gospel relevant for people. If we don't know what their concerns and questions and what the culture they're living in, it's quite difficult for us to bring the gospel into that and to actually share that with them in a way that they're going to engage with and understand. And so, I mean, if we think about the books and the films that we watch, is there any that stand out to you as that have a gospel message or you could use to help share the gospel with people? That
one that does bring to mind, just on that point you're mentioning, you know, what is truth, you know, and how do you define truth? And if the news or the social media is making it very difficult to understand what really is truth, then that could be a very big question. One of the films I've seen recently was a film called Risen I think it came out 2016, and it's really about a centurion who's tasked with trying to find the body of Christ after crucifixion. Pontius Pilate, I assume it is, behind it all, is trying to avoid an uprising by the Judean population, and therefore wants to try and find the body before there's any kind of more disturbance going on. But as the centurion goes through his exercises of, you know, searching and finding, he encounters Jesus in various points as well, and ultimately becomes to believe. So it became a sort of truthful thing, but it's all portrayed through the story of the centurion sort of mind and what he's experiencing and what he's finding, and him coming to his own decision about that truth. So again, I think that would be a good thing to me, you know, talking about it, of helping people sort of say, well, you have to understand it, you have to look at it and read it yourself and see it for yourself and come to the decision. And that's what it's all about.
I had a chance to really think about this, and one of the books that really stands out to me, well, I have two. One is Corrie ten Boom's book, A Hiding Place, because every time I read it, it just has that feeling of, I'm doing this for God. This is what God would want me to do. And all the things that happened to her and her family was devastating. And I happened to be able to go to Ravensbrück at one time to see where she was at. And it was very moving to walk through the yard and stuff that they had to stand in. And I just think that what a wonderful witness she was. And the other book that I thought of is a book that I read a long time ago, and it's by Philip Yancey, and it's called A Shepherd Looks at the 23rd Psalm. And it goes through the whole 23rd Psalm through the eyes of a shepherd. And it's really quite touching. And it really made me understand what it means for Jesus to be our shepherd.
I think that's really good, isn't it? Because these are ways that we can relate to and we understand, but also those people who aren't Christians, that don't have a belief, actually they all will have experienced books and films, and, you know, films that have a good guy and a bad guy in them, or, you know, have a end of the world kind of theme, or things like that they can relate to. And if we can use our experiences of reading books and watching films and use that to help explain the gospel, then I think that's a really, really good place to be in, something that we can all engage in as well.
Yeah, I think there's an underlying thing quite often in a lot of not just films and books, but even dramas, for example, on TV about good and evil. And quite often, you know, it's good conquers evil. So it suggests to me that there's always an underlying desire for people wanting good to be there, you know, in society, and evil not to take over and dominate in any shape and form. So, you know, I think there is a you know, desire out there, really, you know, and people would say, you know, we're booked to worship and everything. So, you know, it needs to be tapped into, doesn't it? And I think there, you know, we could potentially pick up on anything that's going on, particularly in sort of dramas and things, to sort of start and relate it to a particular story, and how that desire comes about. And if you talk about that end point of wanting good to conquer and win, then that's what is everyone's life, you know, even if it's just somebody sort of saying, well, I'm quite happy with my comfortable little life sort of thing. You think, well, yes, but why have you got that? It's only because society and culture around it works that way.
Yeah,
I think there are lots of themes.
Absolutely. I think that's great. Thanks, guys, for your time today to come and help explore that and unpick that a little bit. Really, really useful. And I hope everyone else has enjoyed that and found that helpful as well. Thank you.
Good.